Yeah, so this is something which we had discussed in the last class, the several probabilities involved. I'll share a journal paper regarding this, forgot to share it yesterday. So this is what we discussed. We have seen there is majorly we can identify three probabilities which is involved in crushing process. One is the probability whether the particle will make a collision with the other particle or the wall of the crusher or grinder. The next probability is whether the collision is good enough to generate a crack inside the particle. And the third probability is whether the crack is good enough or the collision is good enough so that the crack propagates to the other end of the particle and it eventually leads to a breakage of the particle. So these are the major three probabilities which were involved. And then we have seen some of the expressions and some of the basic theory of how we can estimate all those probabilities without going into the detailed derivation. Right, then we have seen how we can estimate the crushing efficiency, taking care of the mechanical efficiency also. So how we can estimate the work done which is required and estimate the efficiency. Then we solved, I think we have solved two problems where we have seen that given a set of particle and given the range of particle size, how we can assess like which law we can use to estimate the energy required to break the particle. That is what one problem we had solved in the last class, and that is what we did in the last class, right? So more or less we have some idea of how the crushing operation works and what is the basic way of estimating the energy required for this process. All these things what we have learned so far. So now I will go to the different type of size reduction process which is mostly followed in industry. So this is broadly classified into three different classes. First is the coarse size reduction, when you have the particle which were manually break to a limited size so that you can now go and use it in an instrument. So the first type of instrument which takes this big chunk of particle and reduce it to a moderate size, those are known as crushers. So it is quite obvious that if you wanted to break a very huge size of particle to a uniform powder size, you cannot use a single instrument, because a single instrument will not give you the proper desired size range if you wanted to work in a very long range of particle size. So that's why we divided the entire process into three major class of instrument or the process that we use to break the particle and bring it to a very small size. The first one is the crushers. So some of the examples of crushers are jaw crushers, gyratory crushers, crushing rolls, etc. So these are the name of some of the crushers. So the basic purpose of the crusher is to bring the particle size to from a very big to a moderate one. So that is the size range of particle which is used for crushers. The typical size range, the typical feed size range given here is around 50 to 250 millimeters. So this is the feed size which were given to a crusher, and it brings the particle to around 100 or sub 100 range of millimeter range of size. Next one is the intermediate size reduction. So here the product from the crushers would be a feed to the intermediate size reduction equipment. So these are known as grinders. Some of the examples of grinders are hammer mill, rolling compression mills, attrition mills, tumbling mills, etc. So these are the examples of some of the examples of grinders. So we will go into few equipments and see the details. We will not be able to cover all the equipment details. We will go into some of the equipment and see how it operates. So typically the feed size range here is something which you will get as an output from the crusher. The last one is the fine size reduction. The feed size range here is 5 to 15 millimeters. So if you see different books, you will see this range varies differently, but the order of magnitude will remain same. So it's not like a very huge difference, but this number might vary from book to book. So the basic philosophy is the very big one we will directly get whatever we directly get from ores or from nature, break it manually, then put it to crusher, make it to a size where you can do an intermediate breaking, that is feed to a grinder and then put to a ultra fine grinder if you wanted to make it even smaller. So depending on the process, we will stop at any intermediate step. If you wanted to make it from very big to very small, then we have to go through all these three crushing equipments. Right. Again, this is the same information, some of the crushers and grinders. It's taken from a different book. That's why you will see the name is a bit different, but the philosophy is same. It's a crusher grinder and then the ultra fine grinder is the intermediate size, and for the last one is the fine one. So in terms of like if I talk about the basic mechanism which you have seen, the type of forces which were used to reduce the particle size. So what can be the predominant force which can be used in crushers to break the particle size from a very big one to a small one? Just from your intuition, can you predict like which type of force would be more predominant in crushers? The basic objective of crushers is to reduce the particle size from a very big one to a moderate one. And we had discussed some of the forces which is associated in breaking the particles. Which type of forces would be predominant in crushers? Any idea? Just random idea. You wanted to break a very big particle to a intermediate one. The type of forces, if you recall, we had discussed something called compression, impact, attrition, shear, all these type of forces we had discussed. So which one would be predominant in crushers? Any idea?
The compression, I think.
Compression is there, but it's not predominant. Compression is obviously is there. Which one is predominant? Which one of these forces would be predominant if your particle size is big?
Shear.
Shear will be big if the particle surface.
Sir, attrition, I think.
It is same if the surface area is smooth. It's the impact force. So if your particle size is big.
Compressive.
Yeah, compressive and impact. These two are basically predominant here, and out of them, impact is more predominant because of the huge particle size. Whereas in grinders, you have the impact as well as compressive as well as some sort of attrition and shear force. But the predominant one here is compression. Whereas in ultrafine grinders is the attrition and the shear force that will predominate. Because here the feed particle size itself is very small and you are further reducing it to a powder type of feed. So these ultrafine grinders are mostly used in pharmaceutical industries where you need to break and bring the particle size into a very fine and uniform one. And these all are for hard materials. For soft materials, obviously we have to use cutting machines. These are knife, dicers and slitters. These are we will not go into the details of this type of cutting machines, but these are also used where you have soft materials like wood type of material. Okay, so few of the instrument I will discuss, specifically jaw crusher I will discuss in detail. The crushing rolls or roll crusher also I will show you some of the mechanism. Hammer mills mostly I'll send you the notes and it's more informative. There's nothing much to understand. Tumbling mills I'll again go to some details. This ball mill, this rod mill, so I'll go into some details of the mechanism. Fluid energy mill is again it's not very detailed. I'll just show you the mechanism and how it operates. Okay, so we will start with the jaw crusher. So it falls into the initial crushers or the primary or coarse size reduction equipment. Right, jaw crusher is one of the instruments. So this is how a jaw crusher looks like. So I think you have already seen the video of how the jaw crusher operates, but let's have a recap. This is working principle of jaw crusher. So there are different type of jaw crusher. This is one specific type of jaw crusher where you have one hand of the jaw crusher or one plate you can say which remains static and another which is known as fixed jaw and the other one which moves which is fixed with a crankshaft. This is fixed with this is basically attached with a crankshaft to a wheel. And what is the purpose of crankshaft? Have you ever heard of this term, crankshaft?
Sir, convert rotatory and linear like interchangeability amongst these motions.
Anywhere, have you heard of the term crankshaft?
Yes, sir. Sir, in the
Sir,
two-wheelers
engine.
it is used.
Steam engine, have you seen the old steam engine? And how the wheel rotates? It has a shaft attached with it, right? Any one of you have seen the rotation of wheels in an old steam engine, where you have piston attached with this and the piston moves in a linear direction and it converts the linear motion into a circular motion? Any one of you have seen that? Or can you visualize that? Like,
Sir, in the car engine
okay, the
also
purpose
like the
of this
piston system.
crankshaft is to convert the motion into a different type of motion. So it can convert the linear motion into a circular or rotational motion, or it can do the reverse flow, go into reverse flow. So this is here, it is doing in a reverse way. It's the circular motion of your wheel, it is converting into a linear motion. So you have the horizontal movement of the jaws, where actually movement is circular. So you can see here. So this one will remain static and this one will move, and you feed the particle between these two jaws, and what would happen, the particle will impact on the surface of these jaws, as well as the jaw will make a compressive force on the particle, and resultant of these two will lead to a breakage of the particle, and the particle will eventually go to a, break to a smaller size and will pass through this jaws, between these two jaws. Obviously, the minimum particle which can pass through between these two jaw would be what? Any idea? Like, what is the minimum size of particle that can pass through between these two jaws? See the dynamic motion. Yeah, so what is the minimum size of particle which can pass through these two jaws?
Sir, that minimum opening like
Just look at the video,
last.
you yourself can see. Yeah, it's moving in this direction. It's moving in horizontal direction. It's opening and then again it's closing. When it's closing, it's pushing. It's giving a compressive force to the particle. The particle is as well as impacting on the jaws. So, what is the minimum size of particle which can pass through? If the particle is bigger than that size, it cannot pass through. What would be that? Not in terms of number, in terms of like jaw geometry. Can you tell me?
Sir, the minimum distance between the lower portion of
In
the
terms
jaw,
of opening of these two jaws?
at the minimum distance between the lower portion of the jaw.
Any idea?
Hello.
Okay, see the motion of it is because it is moving in this horizontal direction, so it will have a minimum opening as well as a maximum opening, right? So the minimum size of particle which can pass through between these two jaws would be what? Would be same as the minimum opening of these two jaws or the maximum opening?
Sir, minimum opening.
Any answer? Yes, sir. That's a random guess, like minimum or maximum. Is the question clear to you?
Hello, sir. Are we audible?
Okay, can you see the video? It's moving and can you see the animation?
Sir is not able to hear us.
Hello?
Excuse me, sir, are you able to hear us?
No, I couldn't able to hear you. I think there was some problem. Were you saying something?
Yes, sir. Like 2 or 3 of us were
Any of us-
speaking the answers.
Okay, I couldn't able to hear you actually. Anyways, what is your thoughts? Like, what would be the minimum or maximum?
Minimum distance between that lower part of both the jaws, like that is the minimum particles.
So it would be the opposite. It would be maximum. No, because my question was minimum or maximum. What is the minimum size of particle that can pass?
Minimum, so sir,
Yeah,
the
that
bound
Minimum
will
will
be
be the
like
minimum
maximum.
distance between the lower
Yes.
portion, right?
Maximum size will be the minimum distance between the lower part of the two jaws.
Yes, right, absolutely right. Fine. So rest are mostly the some of the terminologies which you get accustomed with this jaw crusher. One is this electronic wheel or electronic shaft wheel. This is also known as flywheel. This is movable jaw, and this is something known as toggle. So you will see a different type of jaw crusher where you will see two toggles instead of one toggle. So that is known as double toggle jaw crusher. This is known as single toggle jaw crusher, the example that you are seeing. And this is the location of your the movable jaw which is attached with the free wheel. The position at which this movable jaw is fixed, it's known as the position of pivot. So let's go into a more detail. So depending on the position of this pivot, there can be three type of jaw crusher. One is known as Blake jaw crusher, where the pivot is located at the top. So the same as this example. Here you can see that the pivot is located at the top. The next one is where the pivot would be located somewhere at the bottom, and the jaw will move in like this. Moving like this. And the third one is known as universal jaw crusher, where the pivot will be located at somewhat at the center, and the jaw will move both in the forward, both in the top and the bottom. So it will move in this direction as well as in this direction. So it will move horizontally like this and like this. So this is one of the example of universal jaw crusher. So this is the three classification of jaw crusher based on the location of pivot only. Now, why we have these three type of pivot? What is the requirement? I'm giving you two feeds, right? In one feed, I want my objective is to get more uniform particle size, right? More uniform particle size, but I can compensate with the load. I can reduce the load to the jaw crusher, but I want more uniform size of particle. Whereas in other case, I need to have a heavy loaded jaw crusher to be used. Like my requirement is huge, but I can compensate with the non-uniformity in the product. Even if it is not that uniform, I can still manage with that. Now, in these two requirements, can you suggest what type of jaw crusher we can use based on only these three classifications?
Sir, for uniform, we will go for the Dodge one, and for the non-uniform and heavy one, we will go with the Blake crusher.
What about uniform? What about universal?
Sir, for the heavy one, we can also go for the universal also.
What made you like feel that the uniformity will be more in Dodge?
Sir, because in the closing one, there will be no in the case of Dodge, there will be the maximum only one type of opening, so the particles will be out with that with uniform shape. That's what I thought.
Okay, any other thoughts from anyone? I'll come back to you, like whether you are right or wrong. Any other thoughts from anyone? It's not exactly right. So the universal is mostly used for uniform particle size requirement, because you see that the chances of getting the particle feeling the compressive force twice is more probabilistic here, right? Because the jaw will hit the particle here as well as here also. Depending on the feed flow rate, we can compress the particle twice using the jaw, using the movable jaw here. That's why the universal jaw crusher is mostly used when your requirement is to have more uniform size of particle. And the difference between this requirement between the Blake and the Dodge is depending on other parameters. Mostly, if you have heavy requirement, people use Blake jaw crusher. And construction wise and like stability wise, the Blake jaw crusher is more useful, and that's why it's the most famous one and most used jaw crusher in most of the industry. So wherever you will see, you will mostly see Blake jaw crusher. The rest two are not that common. This is depending on the location of pivot, right? And now, depending on the number of toggles you have, there are two types of jaw crusher. One is known as single toggle jaw crusher, another is known as double toggle jaw crusher. So this is the toggle which I told you. So this is a single toggle jaw crusher, and you have seen this jaw crusher already in the first animation. There is something called slippage principle. I'll not go into the detail of this slippage principle. So this is somewhat related to whether the particle will pass through the jaw crusher or not. So it might happen the particle, you fed the particle here, but because of the tangential force which is associated with the particle and the wall of this, if that is more than the frictional force, then the particle might jump and go back to the top again. So this is something called the anti-slippage or slippage. So you have the slippage is something which you want and which will allow the particle to nip through the jaws. This phenomena would be more clear when we will go to the roll crusher. We will go into detail on the nipping process in the roll crusher. But this is for your information that when you have a single toggle attached with it, that is known as single toggle jaw crusher. And when we have this, you can see here, when we have multiple toggles attached with it, it is known as double toggle jaw crusher. This is toggles. This is the opening between the movable and the static jaws. This is the location of your pivot. So what type of jaw crusher is this? Depending on the location of pivot. So we had three types: Blake, Dodge, and universal. Which one? Come again? I couldn't able to hear you. Which type of jaw crusher is this? Blake, universal, or Dodge? See these three. This is Blake, this is Dodge, this is universal. Which one is this?
Sir, Blake.
Yeah, this is a Blake. This is Blake double toggle jaw crusher, the full name. These are informations. So this came from basic intuition as well as the practical relevance as well as the experience. So why it is 0.9, there is no scientific reason behind it. And all these parameters, there is nothing to understand. I'll just share this slide so you can go through what is the minimum maximum gap which is there in Blake, in single toggle jaw crusher, in double toggle jaw crusher. This all came from the industrial relevance and mechanical design of the jaw crusher, which we will not go through. And this is how the double toggle Blake jaw crusher looks like. This is we have already seen this one, and this is the overhead pivot. double toggle jaw crusher. These are the images which I only could find in the internet and in relevant books. So I can only show you these. These are the jaw crusher. These are the type of jaw crusher, which how it looks like. Nothing much to understand. Just have a look at it later on when I will share the slide. This is a single toggle overhead electronic jaw crusher, and this is a Dodge one, right? You can see the pivot is located at the bottom. Now, in all the jaw crushers, if I ask you to like estimate the compressive force, because impact forces we can directly estimate, but the compressive force, which is one of the force that is responsible for breaking the particle, is what? Is the horizontal component of the force which is hitting the particle and try to compress it and break it eventually. So how we can estimate that compressive force? Like in a very crude way. So this is the force diagram of the entire jaw crusher, and this is, I have taken an example of double toggle, and your pivot is located at the top, so it's a double toggle blade type of jaw crusher. And we will try to estimate the force. Now what we know is if we have a crankshaft, and this is what is known as crankshaft. So this is, you can see that this is converting the circular motion into a linear one, right? And this linear motion is eventually translated through these toggles and responsible for moving these jaws, and these jaws are giving the particles a compressive force which lead to a breakage of the particle. Now we want to estimate this force which is responsible for the compression of particle, which is one of the relevant force for breaking the particle. Now what we can estimate directly from the RPM and all this stuff is the F1, the force at which your crankshaft is moving, which is attached with an arm to the toggles, and toggles will move and eventually give a compressive force to the moving jaw. Now how we can estimate, given this line diagram? Let's assume that it is making an angle theta with both the toggles, and the force that is transmitted to the toggles is F2. Let's mark this 2 by F2. Now F2 is something which is intermediate. F1 is something which we know from the RPM and the mechanism of shaft, which we can estimate. So we want to assess this Fx in terms of F1 only. And let's take any random location x from the location of the pivot on the moving jaw, and let's take the length of the moving jaw to be L. So we want to express Fx in terms of F1 as well as the geometrical parameter, which is L, and x is any random location. How can we do that? How can we progress first? This is not a very difficult problem. You have solved more complex problem in your JEE. Just look at the force diagram, and you have to estimate this Fx in terms of F1 and x and L. Okay, final expression I am giving you. Just look at the final expression. I'm also telling you how to do it, but you have to do it on your own and come up with the solution in the next class. If any one of you have any difficulty, just tell me, I'll solve it in next class, but I'll ask you to solve it because this is very simple one. So what you have to do, you have to first draw a diagram and try to estimate F2 in terms of F1, right? Now if I take any arm, any one of this arm, and let me try to draw it.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, Fx will be like perpendicular to the jaw crusher face, right?
Which one?
Fx, the force
Yes,
you are
yes, yes, yes,
exerting,
yes, yes.
perpendicular to jaw crusher.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay, the question is, I hope the question is clear to you, and it went to the next slide. Okay, let me go back. And so what I told you is like you have to estimate this fx. What you by the this fx you have to estimate. Fx is the horizontal component, right? Someone asked like what is the it is the horizontal component of the force. Like just to give you an idea, like if you have to find out this f2, right? You find out the f2 and find out the horizontal component of f2 and translate that component from this location to a location anywhere here x. You make a force balance about this point, because this is the point L into this whatever force you will get here, that could be equal to fx into x, and then you would be able to find out the first, your first objective would be to you draw a triangle like if this is your f2 and this is theta, forget about f1 first. So this would be your y component of your f2 force, and this would be your x component of the f2 force, right? So we can write cos theta is equal to f2y divided by f2, right? So here we will get a relation of f2y is equal to f2 cos theta. f2 cos theta. So similar way, if I draw it for here, we will again get f2y equal to f2 cos theta, right? And f1 is what? It's the combination of two f2s, f2y. So we can finally write, I'm skipping some steps. I'm basically, you have to do it at your home. Next day, if you find any difficulty, this is what we can write, f1 is equal to 2f2 cos theta. f2 cos theta is what? f2 cos theta is basically f2y. Similar way, you find out f2x, what is the x component of your f2, and now you find out the f2x here and translate this f2 from here to here, writing that f2x multiplied by L would be equal to f2x multiplied by L would be equal to fx multiplied by x. Then you would be able to find out the expression, this one finally, because f2x you can substitute f2x in terms of f1, First in terms of F2 and then F2 in terms of F1, and then we'll finally land up to this equation. You try to solve it at your home. If you find difficulty, just tell me the next class, I'll solve it. Just give some time. Okay, this is more or less a brief idea of how the jaw crusher works and what is the principle, basic principle and all this. The capacity of jaw crusher is something which I am not covering here, but as I have given you the PDF copy of this book, here you will get the capacity of jaw crusher in a very nice way. So just go through that chapter 7 maybe, the Ashok Gupta book. Just go through the chapter 7 or 8, I am not very sure of, either 7 or 8, you will get a very good idea of how we can estimate the capacity of jaw crusher. It's mostly full of very more in empirical equation, that's why I'm not going into that detail. But if any one of you are interested, you can go through. So this is more or less about jaw crusher. Let's see another type of crusher which is known as gyratory crusher. So this class would be more informatory. Yeah, so this next one is the gyratory crusher. The principle is, the construction is same, but the basic principle of breaking the particle remains same. See, here you have a central wheel which is moving in a gyratory motion, and you are feeding the particle from both sides. And this is the three-dimensional view of the gyratory crusher. The central rod will move in a gyratory motion, and the particle that you are feeding here, it will hit on this moving wheel as well as the fixed wall of this gyratory crusher, and because of the compressive force between this moving wheel as well as the wall, the particle will break, as well as the impact force at which the particle is impacting on both the walls and the joints. This is another type of crusher. These are different information regarding the gyratory crusher. Again, I am not going through this detail of the mechanical detail. I'll supply you the slides and you can just go through it. What is the different type of mechanical information that you need to know to operate this? What is the gap and what is the diameter that is required? All this mechanical information you will get from this slide. So I'll share you the slide. All this information. The next is the something called roll crusher. So roll crusher is something where instead of a single moving machinery, here we have two rolls which will rotate in an opposite direction, and you will feed the particle from the top. See, so you will feed the particle from the top, and what would happen, like because both the rolls are moving in an opposite direction, the particle which is bigger than the gap between these two rolls will feel a compressive force and eventually nip through these two rolls and reduce its size and come out as a product finally from here. Just try to imagine, like in all the three equipment that you have seen, the basic principle of breaking the particle is same. It's the geometry and the construction that you are making different to achieve your goal, but the basic mechanism and the basic principle remains same, right? Ideally in offline course, what we do is like you can see all these instrument lying in our lab, so you would be in a position to do the experiment on your own and see this equipment and handle this equipment on your own. Then you will get the actual feel or actually practical feel of how this roll crusher looks and how this roll crusher operates. So roll crusher we have jaw crusher also, we have others, the ball mill, rod mill, all these some intermediate mills also we have. So those will give you better feel. So once you get a chance to come back to the campus, you can visit the mechanical operation lab and see this instrument if you wanted to see how it looks and how it operates. But this is a small animation of the breaking principle of the roll crusher. Again, the construction wise, it's there are different type of, so you can have rolls where the surface of the rolls might have tooth attached to it. It's like a rough surface they make, or you can have a smooth one. Now if your particle is very hard and it's very difficult to break, so then people use the toothed roll crusher, and you can have double tooth roll crusher as well as you can have single tooth roll crusher. Single tooth roll crusher means again it's similar to your jaw crusher, one arm will remain stationary, but here instead of the horizontal motion you have circular motion of the other wheel. Particle passing this through will break and eventually reduce to its size. In double toggle roll crusher it's the same as this one, only the surface of this roll crusher is toothed, so it's like you have rough surface at the periphery of these rolls. And there these two terms which is very popular in this roll crusher or roll crusher mechanism. One is the nipping mechanism. All the three instruments you have seen, you can appreciate that to break the particle, the first requirement is the particle has to pass through the instrument. So the particle has to nip through the instrument to reduce its size. Now, what will assure that the particle will not jump out of the machine and it will pass through? So there is a term called nipping angle which is used and which is pretty easy to estimate in roll crushers. And this nipping angle is nothing like, let's take a particle. Let's take this particle. For the simplicity, we will take our feed particle to be a spherical one, right? Now what we are doing, we are neglecting the gravitational force, right? Now the two forces that acting on this particle, or the feed that you can think of, the feed, are the tangential force and the normal force, which acts here at the connection or at the point where your feet and the roll touches each other. So there we have two forces, one is tangential force, another is the normal force, and the resultant of two force has to act downwards, then and then only the particle will pass through or nip through between these two rolls, otherwise the particle will not nip through. If the resultant force will act upward, the particle will jump and try to go outside. Okay. So if this resultant force is greater, or resultant force is like acting upwards, the particle will be thrown out of the rolls and there will be no crushing. Obviously, if the particle goes out, there will be no crushing. Now, what would be the limiting condition? The limiting condition is therefore when the resultant force, let's assume that the resultant force is small r, it is horizontal. Like when your resultant force is acting at a horizontal direction, then and then only that is the minimum case where the particle will break. Now, if it is acting somewhat upwards, so the particle will not break and it will go outward. Just think like you have a resultant force. Let me draw it. You have a resultant force somewhat like this, and it is acting at a horizontal direction. Now, if it has a component, or if the resultant force is acting upward, somewhat upward, the particle will go up. Okay, if the resultant force is acting downwards, then it's fine, the particle will pass through, and the resultant force is nothing but the resultant between the tangential force and the normal force, which is acting at the interface of the solid and the roll. Both are solids, the feed and the rolls. So under this limiting condition, the angle between the tangents is called the nip angle. So the angle between these two tangents, here the nip angle that you can see in this image is 2 theta. So this 2 theta is your nip angle. Since the maximum angle beyond which the particle will not be nipped is designated as 2 theta. So under this limiting condition, the vertical component of N, the normal force, and the vertical component of the tangential force will balance each other. So we can write something like N sin theta is equal to, where N is the normal force I am taking and T is the tangential force. Let's mark it as T cos theta. Or we can say that the tan theta is equal to T by N. Now there is a physical term associated with this ratio of the tangential force and the normal force. This is equivalent to the coefficient of static friction. So the condition is what? The condition is tan theta has to be less than equal to mu. And equal to mu is the limiting condition. If it is more than mu, obviously the particle will not nip through. It will go above and go outside the equipment. Now with this theta is something, as you can see, this theta is a material property here. It is directly associated with the material property, which is a static friction coefficient. Now, knowing this static friction coefficient, we can estimate the theta. Now, if we know this theta, the angle of nip, 2 theta, this we can estimate. And this angle of nip, if we know, now we would be in a position to estimate the diameter of the rolls that is required to nip the particle or the break the particle. Now, how it is associated? It's from the simple geometry you can find out the radius of the rolls. How we can do that? As by definition, this is 2 theta, and if this is 2 theta, obviously this has to be theta, because this has to be. Okay, let me again use the pen. So this has to be equal to. If I draw a single line, this would be equal to theta. This angle would be 90 minus theta. This angle would be again 90 minus theta. So this has to be theta. Now, if this, yeah.
So the radius of the roll here means that the maximum particle size that can be nipped, right? Like
no, the radius of the roll, this distance we want to estimate.
Oh, d by 2. Okay.
Yeah, this distance we want to estimate knowing theta.
Okay.
Okay, so theta is something which you can estimate knowing the friction coefficient. Now, from the geometry that we have drawn, so if we take this red triangle ABC, from triangle ABC, can we write cos theta? Cos theta would be equal to what from the triangle? From the red triangle, from this triangle, cos theta would be what?
R plus d by 2 by R by 2 plus L by 2, maybe by symmetry.
Tell me in terms of triangle. Let's start with the very basic one. So it would be AC by AB.
AC by AB, yes.
Yes, AC by AB. And AC is what? Here, AC is basically this R. This is R, right?
R plus L by 2.
R plus L by 2. R plus L by 2. And AB is what? Again R plus
D by
2. Right. So cos theta is equal to R plus L by 2 divided by R plus D by 2. Just simplify this, you will get this equation. So radius of the roll you can estimate if you know the material. In a nutshell, if you know the material, you can basically estimate the radius of the roll. So this is another way of defining theta by making a force balance. of the normal component and the tangential component, but this is something which I think I had already derived here. So knowing this theta, you can obviously estimate the radius of the roll. Now this mu is what? This mu is defined as the static friction coefficient, but ideally your roll is moving, right? Your roll is moving and the particle is also falling. So it's not a static condition. It's the dynamic friction coefficient we should take care of. Now how to correlate the static and the dynamic friction coefficient? So again, scientists came up with a condition with an experiment, and they have seen that this is the relation. So if you know the static dynamic friction coefficient, you can estimate the static friction coefficient, because dynamic friction coefficient is something which is more relevant here. This is a correlation, came from the experimental observation. There is no derivation in it. And this is also related with the RPM of your roll. Okay, so I'll stop here. So maybe in the next class, we can give some idea of the capacity, how we can estimate the capacity of roll crusher. And then I'll go to the ball mill and rod mill. And then that would be, I think, no, then we have to see how we can estimate the efficiency of a closed circuit and open circuit operation. All these things I will discuss maybe in the next class. Okay, so I'll stop here, and if you have any questions, you can stay, otherwise you can leave.